You know what really irritates the hell out of me is the new ex-Muslim fraternity who insist on calling themselves ex-Muslims. You know, imagine if you were married to a douchebag husband, a guy that really is the worst, and you can't believe that you had this 10 years wasted with this guy if you're a female. And you are divorced from this guy, and this guy's name is, Mahbub. And you say, look, I hate Mahbub, and my name, and I'm going to call myself Mahbub's ex. And if you introduce yourself to everyone, you call yourself Mahbub's ex. Who are you? I'm Mahbub's ex. Who are you? I'm Mahbub's ex. Yeah, and Mahbub is this, and Mahbub is that, and Mahbub this, and that, and the other. Now, don't you think there's some mental illness involved there? And yet, you get all these ex-Muslims who run around building YouTube channels, making money because of the money. But I'll tell you what is really behind it. You know what was very, very in vogue and in fashion in the early 2000s was the anti-Islam new atheist movement. Guys like Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and many of these guys, the new atheists, they used to run around and blame everything on Islam and blame everything on the Muslims. You know, obviously they can't anymore because now, you know, they've been shut down by COVID, they've been shut down by climate change, they've been shut down by gender activists, and so they don't have any axe to grind with Islam right now, so they've gone a bit quiet on that front. But you know what grew out of them? There's a little wart that grew out of that new atheist movement, which was a Western phenomenon. It was a phenomenon strictly located within the West, English-speaking West mostly. And what grew out of that movement was a little warp. I'll call it a wart or an abscess or something, and that is the new or the ex-Muslim movement. Now then you had several channels coming about, and most of the people who actually frequent or who subscribe to those channels are the masses of Muslims located in the Indo-Pak subcontinent. Because in that Indo-Pak subcontinent, you get 1 billion Hindus, and they have an axe to grind with Muslims. Their brainwashing is just the worst. And if you couple brainwashing with rank ignorance and superstition, you get a big mess. And that is currently what you get in India under the BJP, who's the party of Modi. You know, it's the Hindu nationalism, and I'll make another video on that one day about Hindu nationalism and stupid nationalism, maybe we should call it, because it's really the worst in the world. You know, at least other forms of nationalism are slightly more intelligent, but these guys, honestly, all I see is just a pitiful phenomenon when I look at the BJP and all the idiots that support them, the politicians, etc. So this ex-Muslim movement, I don't even know their names. I'll show you a few of the videos, a little excerpt, and you can see who I'm talking about.
He didn't understand why
these guys
Elijah has to do
this is an atheist
even after I
on the left, supposed.
And finally, he suggested
and he refers to
that
himself
Yahweh is probably
as an ex-Muslim.
polytheistic
and there is an Islam-hating Christian on the right, David Wood. The only thing that unites them is that they both hate Islam. But if you think how crazy it is that the guy on the left actually believes in nothing. He doesn't believe in Christianity. He doesn't believe in any God. He's an atheist. And the guy on the right is supposed to have 98% or 95% in agreement with Muslims, because, I mean, we all agree in God. That's the primary feature of our philosophy, is that the existence of a supreme God. We even believe in Jesus. We even believe Jesus was miraculously born, etc. All these things that the Qur'an speaks about. And so these two guys are finding common cause in their hatred of Islam. But they're not the only ones. There's others also. There's this one also. And he's slightly less venomous, I think. I see a little bit more sense coming out of his mouth. But also defines himself as an ex-Muslim. mean, how does that make sense? And then we have this con artist, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, also basically trades on an ex-Muslim status. That's like, you know what, I was married to some famous guy, but then you kill the guy and then you still want to brag about having been married to the guy. You know, it's crazy. There's no mental justification. There's no rational justification. They are not people. Their identity is Islam. But they almost come with an anti-Islam to create an identity for themselves. And I want to challenge them. If they don't use that identity, will they be anything? Probably there will be nothing. So they really follow in the tail of these glorious or neo-atheists like Hitchens and Sam Harris. And we know what happened to Sam Harris. Sam Harris's career is over. He's exposed as a fascist. He's exposed as a madman. He's called for the censorship in America. He is calling for a cabal of Americans to stand up and deny the American voters their right to choose a president. So he is history. So what do you do with these ex-Muslim guys who run around calling themselves ex-Muslims? You see, they actually get a lot of clicks and a lot of subscribers now, mostly from the Indo-Pak subcontinent. They get a lot from Hindu nationalists. They get a lot, granted, I concede, they do get a lot from Muslims who are fed up with the crazy Islam that they've been taught. And in Pakistan, it is really a crazy Islam that they fed. And so most of their votes and most of their subscribers come from there. And then they also have the newly disenfranchised right wing in the West. So there's a lot of youngsters, and believe me, their followership is young. Not older people who can think a bit more. They have these young people, or between maybe 16, 17 and maybe 40 or something. I'm sure that's their demographics. If they're prepared to share it, they must tell me. But you have mostly young people in the West, people who are generally suffer a sort of dissatisfaction, unhappiness with their lives, and they always looking for something to blame. I was also young once. I used to blame this one and blame that one and blame my older brothers and blame everyone else except myself. And so they invest, they buy a lot into that type of Western innate rebelliousness within the youth, within the younger generation. But as soon as people can think for themselves, and you know what I'm telling you, it's just craziness for people to go around calling themselves ex-Muslim. The problem is, if they take the ex-Muslim tag away, they lose all these white Western subscribers and viewers, because that is really where they get those viewers, because there's a certain delight that these Western white young discontented, unhappy viewers that they look for, and that is they get some sort of pleasure out of Islam crumbling and falling apart and Muslim attacking Muslim, and they see these guys as really enforcing that kind of Muslim on Muslim fight. And so you get David Wood and these guys really joining ranks, anti-Muslim careerists who make a career out of attacking the Qur'an and Islam. So that is really the philosophy and the psychology behind these guys. If you take away the ex-Muslim in front of their name, then they are nothing. Like Ayaan Hirsi Ali, this Somalian con artist woman also. When you take the word ex-Muslim away from them, they become nothing. Because a black man and a brown man in the West is really a person who's trying to catch up with the West most of the time. If you're just a plain brown person or a black person with the name John Smith in the West with a brown skin, you are just basically playing the catching up game. You are trying to stay ahead and to stay properly culturalized in terms of the norms and the standards of the West. And if this is the fad now, then you've got to jump and follow that fad. If it's tattoo season, you've got to get a tattoo. If it's atheism season, you've got to be an atheist. If it's dog licking season, you get a dog to lick you in your face. If it's a gender change season, then you've got to change your gender. So the West is really just as one Tablighi guy, and I don't support the Tablighi Jamaat's approach, but one guy said, he said it very eloquently in a newspaper in South Africa, the Majlis newspaper. He said, these guys are drifting on a stormy ocean in a boat that is completely rudderless. And that is when you join the West. You know what we're calling you to here is a system where we give your boat a rudder and you give your boat a motor. What is the motor in the boat? The motor in our boat is the desire to be unified with the divine, is the desire to be reunited with the divine where we have our origin. That is the motor. We desire to be back in immortality, to be back where we matter, where we own the universe, where we have a say over the greatness and the vastness of the universe beyond our immediate surroundings. That is the motor that drives our boat, is reunification with the divine. What is our steering mechanism? You see, the steering is the direction, the parameters that God has given us, and that plots for us a course in which we are moving actively and dynamically, and not floating and being washed here and washed there by the currents of the ocean. And you know what? I just saw an interesting thing this morning. They say if you float rudderlessly on the ocean, you will actually end up in one of 5 garbage collection areas on the ocean. Did you know that? If you should float rudderless on the ocean, eventually you will be reunited with one of the 6 garbage dumps in the ocean. And there's one in the Atlantic, and there's one in the Pacific, and there's 2 whatever. I think there's 2 in the Pacific. Just look it up. So if you are rudderless and you are directionless, and you have no drive in your life in this, then you will end up in the garbage heap, believe me, virtually, literally, and figuratively. So I just hope that these people who are still believing that there is something to be heard, or something to be learned from these people, there's as much to be learned from them as there is from a builder who tells you they can build you a beautiful house, but they've never ever built a house in their lives. All they do is criticize your house and tell you how bad your house is. And that is just, it's irrelevant. We should shake it off. We should shrug it off like you push a piece of dust off your shoulder. That's what we should do. Let me talk about these guys' points that they make, because they're harping on and on about the violence in the Qur'an. Really, if you reduce the violent verses, if you really see what are they talking about, you will realize that they are talking about something like 10 or 15 verses. I've actually listed those verses on my website. I've listed all the verses. I've done an audit of the Qur'an, and I've listed all the verses that speak about violence. And believe me, those verses are all connected with warfare. Let me show you here what the US manual says, and then you can decide, why do you criticize? Nothing in the Quran is worse than what the US military manual states. The US Air Force Commander's Handbook 1980 states that a weapon is not unlawful simply because its use may cause incidental or collateral damage to civilians, as long as those casualties are not foreseeably excessive in light of the expected military advantage. Now, there are the golden words. Any person that supports this clause in the U.S. Air Force Commander's Handbook of 1980 should never ever criticize the Quran again. You should never ever criticize any verse in the Quran, because this verse here legitimizes what the West or what the US calls collateral casualties, the death of innocent people, and they've caused a great many of those deaths. We know that in Afghanistan, wedding processions, funeral processions, in Yemen also, funeral processions have been a target. Innocent people in Afghanistan, mostly innocent people, have died in drone attacks. So no quantification also. So if you kill an important terrorist who rode on a school bus, the killing of those kids, all those kids who are on the school bus, is legitimate collateral damage. And that is why the killing of Sheikh Ahmad Yasin, the leader of the Hamas, some 2 decades back in the 1990s, He was actually killed with 9 people. Do you know that? The attack that Zionists used against him, the missile, it killed all the people around him. Some of his family members were also killed. So this attitude of the Muslims are violent, I think you must just measure it against these clauses. Please measure it against these clauses. Let's see what it says. The U.S. Instructor's Guide 1985 states, in attacking a military target, the amount of suffering or destruction must be held to a minimum. It's fine to kill children as long as you don't kill more than is necessary. How many children is necessary to achieve your objective? Because what they will normally say is, and this is really what they will say, is they will weigh it up against the interests of America. So obviously, if you're saying the whole civilization, the whole West is at stake, then you will kill 100 children. You'll kill 1,000 children, as they did. And the U.S. Naval Handbook 1985, it is not lawful to cause incidental injury to civilians or collateral damage to civilian objects during an attack upon a legitimate military objective. Incidental injury or collateral damage must not, however, be excessive in light of the military advantage anticipated by the attack, i.e. it's fine to kill children as long as you don't kill more than is necessary. So, and this is what it looks like. This is what atheism, what the West, what their non-violence looks like. And believe me, once there were hospitals, there were churches, there were orphanages, there were preschools on where this rubble is now. And so we must never ever allow the devil himself to teach us morality. Our morality is based in the Holy Text, in the Holy Qur'an. And our Qur'an says, fight those who fight you, but never exceed limits. And our Qur'an says, if you kill one person unjustly and without just cause, it is as if you kill the entirety of humanity, which means the concept of collateral damage does not arise in Islam. The Muslim Imam, the righteous leader, the Imamul Mahdiyun, the righteously guided leader, not these crazy sultans, these bloodsuckers and parasites who are ruling right now. But if the righteous leader should come into power, he will not allow ever collateral damage or the killing of one innocent person in any attack. And I think this idea of these ex-Muslims, so-called ex-Muslims, telling us about violence and non-violence, I think if they must publicly go on record as condemning these clauses in the American military ops manuals, and then I'll take them seriously again.